Pituitary adenomas are a type of benign brain tumor. In this visual mnemonic video, I'll cover everything you need to know about pituitary adenomas so you'll be ready to go for test day. They say you can never have too much of a good thing, but what about pitchers? For reasons we'll get into soon, this household happens to have a ton of water pitchers lying around. The excess of pitchers here is our symbol for an excess of pituitary gland tissue. In other words, a pituitary adenoma. You know, since pitcher sounds like pituitary, and an adenoma is just a fancy word for excessive growth to form a benign tumor. Pituitary adenomas are a type of benign tumor found in the pituitary gland of the brain. As the name suggests, these tumors arise from overgrowths of the pituitary gland. Now that we've anchored ourselves to pituitary adenomas, let's get into their clinical characteristics. Let's turn to the window in the back. From the moon and stars, you can definitely tell it's pretty late at night. This teenager should be getting to bed soon. By the way, at Pixarize, we use the moon, or nighttime, to represent adult tumors, while the daytime represents childhood tumors, because nighttime comes late in the day after daytime, just like how adulthood occurs after childhood, right? Let this moon and stars remind you that pituitary adenomas are usually found in adults. As part of his nightly routine, this teenager takes vitamin supplements to help him grow. That's why he's mixing those Men's One-A-Day tablets into his drink pitcher. Anyways, this bottle of Men's One-A-Day can help you remember that pituitary adenomas are associated with MEN1. Get it? Men's One-A-Day for Men 1? MEN1, or multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1, is a tumor syndrome characterized by the increased susceptibility to endocrine tumors. Many endocrine tissues are affected, including parathyroid, pancreas, and of course the pituitary gland, as we are discussing here. It should therefore be unsurprising that patients with MEN1 often present with pituitary adenomas. With the susceptible patients out of the way, let's discuss how this tumor clinically presents. By the way, notice how these window curtains are halfway closed? This helps block out the bright moonlight outside. That's why we can only see a small section of light passing through the middle of these curtains. These half-drawn curtains blocking the outer halves of the window can help you remember bitemporal hemianopsia, a type of vision loss in which vision is missing in the outer halves of both the right and left visual fields. This pattern of vision loss kind of looks like these curtains blocking light from the left and right outer halves of the window, right? Pituitary adenomas cause bitemporal hemianopsia due to mass effect. That is, the growth of the tumor mass causes compression on and damage of the surrounding brain tissue. In this case, pituitary adenomas often compress the middle of the adjacent optic chiasm, through which information about the outer halves of each visual field passes through from the retina. This in turn leads to visual field defects on the outer left and right halves of each visual field. So just think of these half-drawn curtains to remember that pituitary adenomas can cause bitemporal hemianopsia. Okay? Meanwhile, this teenager's mom also has a busy nighttime routine. She's dealing with a fussy baby. The baby's hitting this mom on the head to get her attention. Ouch! It should be pretty easy to see that being hit on the head is our symbol for a headache. Due to mass effect of the tumor pressing down on nearby brain tissue, pituitary adenomas can cause headaches. This shouldn't be too hard to understand. Let's move on. As you can see, this teenager has a lot of pimples. Of course, acne is probably due to all those hormonal changes that teenagers go through. Let this hormonal pimply teenager remind you of hormonal abnormalities. Get it? Since teenagers are raging with hormones, right? Pituitary tumors can lead to a variety of hormonal abnormalities. This should make sense since if you remember your physiology, you'd know that the pituitary gland is responsible for producing a ton of hormones like TSH, FSH, LH, GH, ACTH, and prolactin. Also, pituitary adenomas can be either non-functioning or hyperfunctioning, leading to a range in clinical presentations. Non-functioning pituitary adenomas do not produce excess hormones. They can cause hormonal abnormalities by compressing and damaging the pituitary gland. This leads to hypopituitarism, where the pituitary gland does not produce enough hormones. However, if the tumor cells themselves produce hormones in what is called a hyperfunctional tumor, they can lead to hormonal imbalances by producing excess hormones. This is actually far more common, and it's high yield to know what hormones are typically created. Let's get into our next symbols to discuss these overproduced hormones. By the way, what was the baby drinking in his bottle? It's milk, of course. This milk bottle is our symbol for prolactin. You know, since prolactin helps with lactation or breast milk production. A prolactin-secreting tumor, known as prolactinoma, is the most common type of hyperfunctioning pituitary adenoma. Again, I want to repeat this because it is high yield for boards and life. Pituitary adenomas will usually produce prolactin. Prolactinomas can cause galactorrhea, a fancy term for breast milk discharge. Since prolactin also suppresses estrogen in women, this can also lead to amenorrhea, decreased bone density, decreased libido, and even infertility. Prolactinomas are often treated with dopamine agonists, like bromocriptine and cabergoline, since dopamine is an inhibitor of prolactin in the pituitary gland. The prolactinoma can also be surgically removed. We know this teenager is trying to grow big and tall, and that's why he needs all those pictures. Unfortunately for him, his mom's using the pictures to grow something as well. Her plants, that is. See that big bag of fertilizer she's using to grow the plants? This grow fertilizer here is our recurring symbol for growth hormone, or GH for short. Get it? Growth fertilizer for growth hormone? Since fertilizers promote growth. Pituitary adenomas can also secrete growth hormone. This leads to a condition known as acromegaly, which is characterized by excessive physical growth, specifically larger hands and feet, a larger tongue with deep furrows, and a deep voice. Like with prolactinomas, surgical removal of the GH-secreting pituitary adenoma is the major mode of treatment. To grow properly, these plants need consistent temperatures, almost like a greenhouse environment, if you will. That's why this AC thermostat is here to help keep the house warm. This AC thermostat is our symbol for adrenotropic hormone, or ACTH. Get it? Because AC thermostat has the letters A, C, T, and H in it, right? Pituitary adenomas can also secrete ACTH, causing a condition known as Cushing disease. Since ACTH stimulates the production of excess cortisol, Cushing disease manifests with hypertension, immunosuppression, hyperglycemia, and osteoporosis. Cushing disease can also be characterized by moon phases and a buffalo hump between the shoulders. We'll save the details of each hormone abnormality for future videos, but you should know that these tumors can make ACTH. Before we move on, I want to state that pituitary adenomas can also secrete other hormones besides prolactin, GH, or ACTH. After all, any of the hormone-producing cells can turn into a hyperfunctioning tumor. For example, a pituitary adenoma may secrete thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH, which leads to hyperthyroidism. Pituitary adenomas can also secrete FSH, or LH, leading to hypogonadism. However, for unknown reasons, it is rarer for pituitary adenomas to produce these hormones, and instead, most tumors tend to produce only prolactin, GH, and ACTH. So, you'll be good to go. Before we go, let's cover one important complication of pituitary adenomas. I'm starting to see why this kid might need some of his mom's pictures. That one he's holding clearly isn't enough. See how it's filled to the brim, overflowing with this red energy drink? Let this red drink, which is spilling out of the pitcher, remind you of pituitary apoplexy, or hemorrhage. You know, since the overflowing red drink kind of resembles bleeding out, right? Pituitary adenomas increase the risk of a sudden bleeding, known as a pituitary hemorrhage or apoplexy. This should make sense since tumors tend to have high vascularity and blood flow to supply the increased mass of tissue. The blood vessels tend to be quite unstable and poorly organized, leading to a high risk for bleeding or pituitary apoplexy. This is a serious condition that generally presents with a sudden, severe headache and visual impairment. All right, that's it for pituitary adenomas. Let's summarize what we've learned. Pituitary adenomas are a type of benign brain tumor most commonly found in adults. These tumors are usually associated with MEN1, a condition characterized by multiple endocrine tumors in the pituitary, parathyroid, and pancreas. Due to mass effect, pituitary tumors cause headaches and bitemporal hemianopsia, a loss of vision in the outer halves of both visual fields. Pituitary adenomas also cause a variety of hormonal abnormalities. In particular, hyperfunctioning pituitary adenomas produce excess hormones, which are usually prolactin, growth hormone, or ACTH. Finally, pituitary apoplexy or hemorrhage is a serious complication of pituitary adenomas. All right, that's it for pituitary adenomas. Let's go get this teenager some more pitchers to mix his drinks. I'll see you in the next video.